Our next session is going to be about a topic that we've been discussing actually throughout most of the day, but with a little bit of a different twist. We've been talking a lot about data and trust, and in order to actually build trust, inclusivity needs to be a significant component of that. So joining me on the stage is Anja Wyden Guelpa with Civic Lab and Gervais Pellissier with Orange Group. So you both work with data from different perspectives. Could you share with the audience what you're doing with data right now and a little bit of your background, just really briefly, and then we'll get more into the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much. I used to be the state chancellor of the state of Geneva, canton of Geneva in Switzerland. And as you might know, in Switzerland, we vote a lot. We vote all the time. So we vote every 3 months, about 360 times in a lifetime. So voting is a very big thing, and so that's probably why Geneva was a pioneer in e-voting. We had the first online vote in 2003. So trust, security, transparency, that's a big theme all around that. Since now June, I'm built my own company where I work around innovation in the public sector or private sector.
Yeah, you get to work with whoever you want, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Great projects with people I like.
That's the whole point of starting your own company. Okay. And Gervais?
So myself, I've been working for the Orange Group for now 12 years. I'm Deputy CEO of Orange, and I'm in charge of two things in this company, the business with the large corporations, the B2B part, and I'm also in charge of the transformation of the company, including the digital transformation. Regarding Orange, and where Orange, I think, is clearly interested into that game, first, it's one of the big European players in the digital world and in the data world, and we are both, as a group, in Europe, in 8 European countries, and in 21 African countries in the retail business, and in much more countries in the B2B. So for us, the digital adventure and the data business, but also the data responsibility are things which are important.
Great. So I'd like to start with us just broadly talking about trust before we dive into the inclusion aspect of things. So Anja, you mentioned your work with Geneva around voting and democracy, something globally that's a very pressing issue, something that cases like Cambridge Analytica were definitely disturbing for many, and in the United States. What are some things that institutions that are actually collecting data or mining data need to keep in mind in order to ensure that that digital civil rights are viewed as human rights?
It's a very difficult point. I mean, troubles like Cambridge Analytica, which we started to talk globally about it only a couple of months ago, though we knew for almost 2 years what was happening. And I was talking about it at several conferences, and no one cared, which was kind of disturbing. And that was really something that kept me from sleeping some nights. So how can we adapt democracy in such a field? Because democracy is built on a principle, one man or one woman, one vote. And when companies like Cambridge Analytica are able to influence votes or elections, or referenda or elections for money, that just means $1 million, a couple of votes. And we haven't found yet something which we could protect these people. A lot of people talk about hacking e-voting systems or others. Of course, that's a problem. But hacking people's mind, it's much worse. When you influence people, because these companies, they have thousands of data on every one of you. They have, Cambridge Analytica, they say that they had 5,000 data on every person, on about 220 million of Americans, probably it was more than that. So think about it, 5,000 data. It's not just your age, it's not just the fact that you have children, it's just they know you better than your spouses know you, so it's really something very difficult. But I'm still optimistic, even in the democracy field. I think digitalization is a big threat for democracy, and we have to adapt. We are still looking for solutions. But On the other hand, civic techs bring a lot of new ideas, bring young people to it, and I think these solutions can bring more transparency, so hopefully more trust. They can bring more accountability. Politicians are led in a kind of a safe space where they can do their deals, and all the citizens and companies have to live with it. And it can also hopefully bring more participation, so people who have ideas, who are professionals in a business, and they can bring their ideas to the table.
Yeah. And as you were saying, with digitalization, there's always going to be a threat to privacy and security until we all have control over our own personal data, which we talked about in some earlier sessions. But digitalization also enables inclusion of more people, of bigger populations, of scalability. Gervais, is that something you could talk to from the Orange Group perspective on the benefits of digital and being able to include more people through their data?
I think there are two questions behind that. First one is the trust that you mentioned, and I think with the background we have as a company or as a business, we are one of the heirs of the postal service, and I just remind to many clients that when we started, for some of us, our careers, there was a pledge for the postman to pledge that he would never violate the secrecy of the mail he was conveying. And let's be clear, the carriers, at least in the Western world, have applied that now for decades. Maybe not in the East. I think everybody remembers the movie The Other's Taste about the German Democratic Republic, where you had Stasi agents trying to listen to people. So I think this is clearly behind us. So we have built a relationship of trust with our customers. They are using their phone, I think, without asking themselves, am I listened to by my operator? I think at least for 90 or 95% of the clients, again, in the democracies where we operate. I don't say it's true everywhere, but I think in large part of the world. So we are basically on this principle. And this being said, we have considered that even when we gather data on our customers, those data are primarily used to improve the service we deliver to our customers. And by the way, we have also decided not to infringe this barrier between what's private, this means the data you generate for your privacy in your communication with others, versus some of the data that are more public, your location, the time you are using your phone. This, unfortunately, cannot be avoided to be recorded. So the look on trust for us is very important. At the point that we have decided that our customers were trusting us enough to create a bank. For instance, in France, we have started the banking business. And by the way, and I speak in front of a Swiss citizen, banking business is based on trust. Regarding the rest, I think what's important is that even if we want to maintain trust, at the same time, we think our duty as a company, as an operator, is to increase the access to the digital world, basically by developing the infrastructure. We are in the infrastructure business. We are there to build network and to make people use our networks. And that's really the second part of the debate. Trust on one hand, having more and more people included into the use of the digital world.
Mm-hmm. And you just made me think of something. When we talk about people who want to be included or that are using a service, there are also thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that want to be included that can't. For instance, refugees that there's different initiatives using blockchain to give refugees a digital identity and then be able to, so that can enable them to actually get a bank account so they have financial inclusion. And I know neither one of you works for a bank, but do you think at this day and age, with technology advancing the way that it is, that if you're going to be able to move forward in a productive way in society, you have to have a digital identity at this stage?
I think we definitely have to have it. I think the whole question is then, which is the role of states, nations, in digital identity? What's the role of private companies? We have that debate in Switzerland at the moment, where different, more or less public companies are developing these identities. I think that's still something very open, as well as the even broader question, who owns the data? Data is the new fuel of the digital world, that's for sure. But who owns it? The people?
The companies right now.
The operators? But which company? The operator? The one who collects it? It's not very clear. And I think that debate we didn't have that debate yet. I mean, and there are kind of two, I would say there are two visions of that. On one hand, it's the libertarian way. So that means the individual owns his own data. Mm-hmm. Nations or administrations has nothing to do there. Maybe only enforce these property rights or maybe create a kind of a marketplace with blockchain or something else so people can sell liberally their data. And then there is another vision, the Republican, not Republican in a political American way, but Republican in a more French or European way. And in that way, these data are rights that should be protected. So the state should protect the citizens, maybe sometimes even protect them against themselves. Mm-hmm. Like in a lot of countries, it's not allowed to sell your own organs. So that's another vision. And I think since a couple of months ago, we all thought that only the libertarian way would be possible because there is globalization, there is digitalization, states have no real power to do something. And maybe GDPR, even if it's not the best thing that we could have written, it's quite an old thing, but at least I think it helped us, Europe, but also maybe the United States to show that states can do something. Mm-hmm. And maybe it will help us to bring everyone to the table because I think it's really a discussion where states are not able to regulate and to solve the problems. Company alone, neither. And probably we all have to be around the table. Companies, NGOs, citizens, and states.
That was going to be my next question. So at a lot of events at places like the United Nations or the Clinton Global Initiative, which no longer exists, but I used to go to that every single year, or just any events around what the private sector can do to promote social change, there's always very lofty conversations and speeches about the need for public and private sector partnerships, and then nothing really happens. Yeah. Do you think that when it comes to data and trust, well, I mean, some high-level things happen, but I'm talking more about situations where everyday people in small communities are actually feeling it in their everyday lives.
We need the Geneva
but if
Convention.
There's something, yeah, but Gervais, if there's something that where your Orange has been a part of a really strong public and private sector partnership, please tell me.
I think first, by the way, you're right, it's very difficult, and by the way, there is probably, for God's sake, maybe for certain reasons it's better, there is no global governance. By the way, we are just having this conference at the time where the G20 is starting in Argentina. I'm not sure there will be anything on those areas in terms of global governance. However, Anja was mentioning the GDPR in Europe. Maybe it's old, maybe it's not that perfect, but at least it's the first step to start with, yep. And where I think the work has not been so bad between private entities, the European Commission, the governments, some of the associations, some of the citizen groups. So it's a platform. We are still, for this GDPR, 28 member states within the EU, and you have come to a platform that is agreed upon in all the countries as a basic platform. And let's look at it. It's probably today, in terms of continental right, probably the most protective compared to what you find in the US, and for sure what you can find in Asia regarding privacy. And the fact that we are asking to citizens whether they are ready, maybe they are not the owner, it's not stated whether the owner of the data, but they can give what's really GDPR is pushing, and I can tell you most of the companies have worked hard to put that in place, is whether you formally agree to have your data used, resold, for a certain purpose. And I think it's a big progress compared to what we had just 2 years ago. So that's why I'm not so negative in the progress. Regarding some other things, you were mentioning the fact that data of people are used. There is now a pressure made, by the way, and I was interested by our colleagues discussing about from the investment world. Now there is an obligation for big companies like us to publish the annual status of the hearings, of the écoute, I don't know in each country, how many requests we got from the governments to listen on a judiciary basis or on administrative basis to the citizen. That's now published annually. And when there is no publication, that's very clear. This is because this is a state where it's forbidden to say anything on this topic. So everybody can be informed on the situation in every of the countries, in every one of the countries where we are operating. So there are many small progresses on this, I think, to get more information, to get more consciousness of the people on all those topics.
Mm-hmm. More transparency.
More transparency.
Do you think that we're going to be able to have people have the right to choose more? We've been talking a lot about choice, and you said people, they can agree to have their data used a certain way. Do you think more companies will be able to even have that be part of their process?
I think one of the issues is the use of data. I think when you discuss with some of our colleagues working in insurance companies, some are very happy with the fact that today the massive amount of data you can collect on your customers give you a way to price the risk much better. But then, if you think of it, what is the basic situation of insurance? This is that you insure people for risk in a kind of mutual way, where those who have nothing pays also for those to whom something happens. And there is here a very strong debate, especially between the US, let's be clear, and Europe on one point, which is the right of to forget, on the right to forget. That's a strong debate. In the French law today, a youngster who has a cancer, if it's proven that for 10 years he has no new cancer, then he can be insured like anybody else, and the insurance company cannot use its health data for his contract. It is completely erased from the view on his health situation. This is refused by most of the US operators, who consider that there is no right to forget anything. Everything is written forever. By the way, in data, we shall never forget that the problem is not the data of today, but it's mainly the data of yesterday that you have left. And this right to erase or to forget is, in my view, a very long moral debate that where I think clearly the European position is more moral, and that there should be a right to forget.
I think a lot of people would like to forget some things.
No, for sure.
When it comes to their digital activity. So we only have about 2 minutes left. Would each of you like to share an example of a data for good project, initiative, or company that you've come across in recent years, if you can think of any?
Yeah, I would talk about it's one of the first civic first wave of civic tech. It's OS democracy. So it started in Argentina, is now in Mexico, I think Spain, and also United States. So it's really a system where normal citizens, young citizens, less young citizens, they can propose especially something in their field. If someone is a specialist of nuclear energy or something, they can make a proposal, and then people are discussing on that platform. And then they even, in Argentina, they even have elected people, so they take these proposals to the parliament, and then these members of the parliament can even share the discussions they have, and so the whole community can be kind of part of the parliament. I think these are one of the first ones, but I think it's still interesting to really, democracy, the decisions that we are doing today for how we want to live in the future, we have to do it, we have to integrate the most people that we can, and not just an elite, not just some elected people, but we should, right. I mean, the challenges that we face are so huge, we need all voices, and also young people, which often don't vote, only 3 out of 10 vote, and the people who vote the most in Western countries are people between 70 and 75. So let's try to bring in all of them.
Inclusion. Gervais, do you have anything on data for good, really quickly?
On inclusion, I think we have today, we are servicing 130 million customers in Africa. And just meant to mention one point, an additional point on inclusion. One of the things we have observed is that many people have now a smartphone in Africa, but not always the ability to recharge the smartphone. And electricity access is also an issue regarding inclusion. And we have started a program where we sell, I would say, for a relatively minimal price, a small solar-powered system that help people to continue to have access to internet. And this project is showing very, very much interest in several countries. So for us, it's rather positive.
Okay. Well, on that high note, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you both for joining me
Thank you.
on this
Thank you.
discussion for tech and trust and inclusion and democracy. And I think we threw in quite a few other things. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.